There's a lion behind you right now, and the person next to you has no words to warn you. No language has been invented yet. So how do they tell you? That question sits at the center of one of the strangest, most overlooked stories in human evolution. And the answer is far richer than grunting and pointing. Start with something you already do constantly without realizing it. Right now, without speaking, you can broadcast that you're annoyed, confused, or delighted through your eyebrows, your posture, the tightening around your eyes. That's not incidental. The human face has 43 muscles, more than almost any other animal, and most exist purely for expression, a communication device built out of meat and bone, long before language existed. Researchers studying facial expressions across cultures have found the basics are universal. Fear looks the same in Papua New Guinea as in Tokyo. Psychologist Paul Ekman spent decades mapping this and identified micro-expressions, involuntary emotional flickers lasting less than a fifth of a second, leaking through even when someone's actively hiding how they feel. These are evolutionary signals, shaped by natural selection because they helped coordinate group behavior. Someone who could silently broadcast danger without alerting a predator had a survival edge. And so did whoever could read it instantly. We didn't invent communication with language. We upgraded something already running. Now go back further, to roughly 6 million years ago, when our lineage split from the one that became chimpanzees. Watch chimps today, and something uncomfortably familiar shows up. Deliberate gesture, an extended palm to beg, a shoulder touch to request grooming, a beckoning wave to invite someone to follow. Critically, they only use these gestures when they can see the other individual's face, waiting for eye contact, repeating if ignored, stopping once they get a response. That's not autopilot. Researchers at the University of St. Andrews cataloged over 80 distinct chimpanzee gestures, many carrying consistent meaning across groups that had never had contact, meaning these gestures are old, possibly older than the species itself. Human infants confirm the pattern. Around 9 months, before real language emerges, babies start pointing, not just to request things, but to share attention with someone else. Almost no other animal does that. A dog will stare at your finger forever and never look where you're pointing. This is part of why the gestural theory of language, one of linguistics' leading hypotheses, argues language didn't start in the mouth. It started in the hands, and voice came later, layered onto a system that already existed. There's even a neurological hint here. Broca's area, the brain region most associated with language, sits in the same territory that controls fine hand and mouth movement. It may not be a language region that happens to sit near the motor cortex. It may be a motor planning region that got recruited for language. The hands built the road, the mouth just learned to drive on it. But gesture only works when you can see each other, and early humans spent plenty of time where visibility wasn't guaranteed. So sound filled the gap, not words, just acoustic pattern. Vervet monkeys have distinct alarm calls for different predators. One for eagles that sends the troop into bushes, one for snakes that makes them scan the ground, one for leopards that sends them up trees. Same troop, 3 sounds, 3 responses, not emotional venting, but functionally referential, pointing at something specific in the world. Our ancestors almost certainly had something richer, and as group sizes and cooperative hunting grew more complex, the pressure to communicate precisely would only have intensified. Here's the part most people gloss over, though, because the most surprising evidence isn't in the sounds at all. It's in what these early humans were doing with their entire bodies, and it complicates everything we think primitive communication looked like. The voice box itself doesn't fossilize, so we can't know exactly what early Homo sounded like. But the hyoid bone, a small U-shaped bone in the throat, does survive, and Neanderthals had one nearly identical to ours, meaning they likely had the physical capacity for complex vocalization. And Neanderthals buried their dead, made pigments, apparently wore eagle talons as ornaments. Those aren't the behaviors of creatures with nothing to say to each other. Subscribe if this is reframing how you picture primitive humans, because the biggest twist in this story isn't about voices at all. It's about rhythm. Every known human culture has music, drumming, clapping, some form of rhythmic expression, not coincidence. When people synchronize movement, walking, drumming, singing together, oxytocin rises, pain thresholds increase, group cohesion measurably improves. That's why military units march in step, why rituals involve chanting. Shared rhythm signals we move as one, we can be trusted, requiring no language at all. Humans synchronize to an external beat automatically. Most other primates largely can't, suggesting a specific adaptation in our lineage. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar has argued that early rhythm and music may have functioned as grooming at a distance. Because one-on-one grooming can't bond a group of 150 people, but singing and drumming together can bond many at once. Bone flutes found across Europe date back at least 40,000 years, but rhythm itself needs no instrument. Hands on hollow logs, stone on stone, feet on packed ground, and the neurological response to it suggests we've been using it far longer than any surviving flute. Posture did its own work too, making yourself large when threatened, small when deferring, turning a shoulder. These are biologically readable across species, establishing hierarchy without a sound. And when verbal and nonverbal signals contradict, people trust the nonverbal. Every time. Someone says "I'm fine" with crossed arms and a flat voice, and you believe the body over the words. There's also a channel almost nobody talks about: smell. Compounds in the sweat of genuinely frightened people trigger measurable physiological changes in people who smell them, even believing it's a neutral sample. The famous sweaty t-shirt studies found people rate the scent of others with different immune profiles as more attractive. Evolution running mate selection math the conscious brain never signs off on. Early humans, in constant close proximity, would have been bathed in this chemical information continuously. So when did actual language arrive? Language leaves no fossils, but tools hint at the timeline. Oldowan tools, roughly 2.6 million years old, are simple. A stone struck to create an edge. The Acheulean hand axe, appearing around 1.76 million years ago, requires holding a target shape in mind and executing a planned sequence toward it, the same hierarchical cognition underlying grammar itself. By the time Homo sapiens appears roughly 300,000 years ago, the brain had already been shaped by millions of years of gesture, call, and toolmaking. Language may not have needed a dramatic leap, just a final piece clicking into place on infrastructure already there. Even without full language, knowledge still moved across generations, through imitation. Humans copy exact methods, not just outcomes, even reproducing unnecessary steps, a behavior called over-imitation. That tendency let techniques accumulate for hundreds of thousands of years, before anyone could write anything down. Survival knowledge carried in hands that had watched other hands. Put it all together, and the real story is this. Communication before speech wasn't a rough draft. It was a sophisticated, multi-channel system. Face, hands, calls, rhythm, posture, touch, even smell. Coordinating groups long before grammar ever existed. Language didn't replace any of it, it joined it. Every conversation you have today still runs on both systems simultaneously, the ancient ones and the newer one layered on top. When you sense a room's mood shift before anyone speaks, or know someone's lying despite technically truthful words, that's not intuition. That's hardware millions of years old, still working exactly as designed.